Today on the Failing Up podcast, we have Mark King, the president of Keller Williams Realty International. He talks to us about the last 10 years with Keller Williams and how embracing failure is key to success. Let's jump in.
Welcome back to another episode, special episode today, Failing Up, Humble Lessons in Life and Business. We're here with our amazing co-host, Dusty Oglesby. Welcome, brother.
Good to be here.
It's interesting to be in the same room with you for several hours and say welcome to you like every 20 minutes.
I feel like you've said hi to me a few times today. I'm even running, like I usually don't have, I always have something to say and I'm running low on what I'm supposed to say when you introduce me.
I'm going to call you tomorrow. And
so I'll say it's good to see you for the 14th time.
An amazing Bethany voice.
Yeah, same thing.
Right?
I'm still excited to be here.
You're practicing your podcast. Getting better with each one.
I'm trying.
We're about to find out if Mark has a podcast.
Soft, yeah.
And then very special guest. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Mark King.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here.
I have a face for radio, so this is perfect.
Yeah. That's the downside of this is I never realized how. I mean, I guess I realized how big my ears were, but when you put light behind them,
oh yeah,
and we put it on a video over there,
it's a lighting,
right?
Don't look.
I think that's why they put both you and I on the same screen.
Is that right?
They're like, can we put the guys with the ears on the same side?
That's all right. It's a sign of intelligence.
Welcome.
Yeah, and I've never heard that before.
I was going to say, who told you that?
That's it. Mark, real quick, introduce yourself for our listeners that maybe live under a rock.
My name is Mark King. I'm the president of Keller Williams Realty International. I've had 10 roles in this company and failed at every one of them. So I've been waiting for this podcast my whole life. Fail till you don't kind of mentality.
Yeah.
But been here 23 years.
Well, very grateful for your leadership. I've had the experience now. I guess I've been at Keller Williams for... This is actually, I was thinking the other day, it was 2013, the first time an OP invited me to come listen to Gary in Austin.
Wow.
So I was thinking about on my way down here, I was like, it's been a decade, right? Like it's full circle how much we've grown and developed. But,
yeah, what a difference, right? In 10 years. Gary talks about you can be anywhere you want in 5.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal to look at. And then you look at 10 and go, man, never dreamed that when I walked in the door in 2012.
Well, we've had leaders throughout the years, but grateful for your leadership.
Thank you.
The energy and effort that finding that right dynamic of like on our as an OP, right, and the franchise side of the business, and having great leaders here in Austin. You make it so easy for us. One of the things we said in our business planning last October was that with leaders like you, we're able to cut down on the filters needed between KWRI and the agent in the market center.
That's right. That's the goal.
Because we're in alignment with you.
Yeah.
Right. And I would say the great thing about you as a leader is that you've actually chosen to help get in alignment with us.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's not always us following your directive.
Not at all.
How do we get in business and make great decisions together?
Partnership.
And what's best for the agent. So thank you for that.
Well, that comes from starting out as an agent, and like all of my life lessons, it comes from Drake. So I started at the bottom, now I'm here kind of thing.
That's true.
And so 23 years ago.
I was like, is he really? Are we really?
Yeah. We're
like,
quote
maybe
Drake.
I misheard.
I know. That's what Gary and I talk about is different musician
lyrics. The coolness level of our podcast went through the roof.
Yeah.
Because earlier Dave said something about kicks and he didn't even understand Jordan. So
I'll bring it down before we're done.
We've come in.
I
love it.
We just reached a whole new generation.
Yes, we did.
No, I appreciate it.
We just went viral is what we did.
So right tell us a little bit about, we like to talk on this podcast, not about all the successes and a lot of people out there discuss their wins, but about our failures and how we've learned through those and being a testament to that if you're going through something tough right now, that it does get better. But when you think of failure, how do you define that? What does that look like?
I think it's the necessity to become successful. And I think I learned from a great coach a long time ago that if you're not failing, you're not moving fast enough and you're not going to learn fast enough to go where you want to go. And I had huge ambitions in my real estate sales business. What I found early on is that I thought failure, like everyone else tends to start, I thought failure was a sign of weakness or a sign of being wrong, whatever the case is. And when you learn to embrace it and you realize if you can embrace the one concept that the most successful people you know are the best at failing, then you embrace failure in a whole different way. And you have to empower others around you to fail as well. And what I found is all the top teams, I get great exposure to a lot of data, to a lot of companies, to a lot of great agents, to a lot of market centers, et cetera. And the ones who perform the best are the ones who are unafraid to fail. And that's the difference between us. We have the saying in our coaching company that, you want to always look good and be right. And the problem with that is if you're always right, you never learn. And you'll be really right and really low on the success pole if you don't embrace failure.
That's right.
So I think early on when you're growing, if you're growing a company or developing, like you can kind of lean into that and kind of go, all right, I'm down with that. What would you say to a seasoned leader? Because I know I experience now being responsible for hundreds of agents and lots of companies and leaders. Mm-hmm. And they do look to you to know what you're talking about and be right. Mm-hmm. It's harder to show up vulnerable. And yet I think it's completely necessary. But how do you navigate through that once you've kind of reached a level? At the bottom, you got nothing to lose, in my mind, right?
Right.
It's as you start to grow, all of a sudden good becomes the enemy of great, right? You become somewhat paralyzed by willing to make more mistakes.
Yeah, to quantify this, the goalposts always move. And so when you're starting out and everybody has the same goal, every agent I've ever interviewed about getting in this business has a goal of making $100,000 a year. I don't know why, and it hasn't changed with inflation. So we got to do some.
That's true.
Yeah. So when you think from that perspective, if your economic thermostat is there, then you're willing to do pretty much anything. And there's 1,000 different ways to fail your way forward to $100,000 a year in this industry.
Right.
If you choose to make $1 million a year, you've got to make different levels of failures. Right. It doesn't mean you have to take on big, greater risk, but your goalpost, your economic thermostat has to grow in such a way that you're not afraid to take the activities that other people who make $1 million a year take. Mm-hmm. And if you want to make $10 million a year, the same thing. And I work with somebody who makes a lot of money and on a daily basis. And I watch the decisions he's making. He's absolutely unafraid of failure at any level. Mm-hmm. And so to you and I, we might say this is a $30 million failure. Oh my gosh, we're going down. To someone who has an economic thermostat of maybe $100 million a year, that's just par for the course on the way to the next great idea. So you're constantly failing your way forward.
And those greater failures become more and more public.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. Right. Oh man.
And I wish we would, I would listen to the advice I give my children, right? Where it's like, look, no one's going to remember this. Like, when they go to school, I'm like you're the only one thinking about you.
Right.
Right. Like everybody else is thinking about them, just like you're thinking about you. And yet it becomes so hard, in my opinion, in the real world to be okay with that, right?
Yeah.
You see that showing up in agents' world as you're in the purpose room, right? And
well, it's everywhere, and I think it goes back to what Mark just said in the way Gary views it, right? That you said, like, literally, he's not afraid of it. And one of the first things I ever heard Gary say was, at a family reunion in a moment where I felt like I was totally failing, and I was epically, right? And I wasn't the only one who knew. And he said from stage, you're not failing, you're just learning to succeed. And immediately I piped up and I was like, I got to be the most successful dude in this room. Because I can write this out for you. But I think that's what it goes back to is there's not a single one of us that aren't on some level, I think, in a season of failure of some form. Personally, business, mentally, physically. I mean, it's just part of it, right?
It's a constant. I mean, you're always failing. One of the crazy things about failure is it can be disguised with smaller than expected successes.
Yeah.
Right.
And we see that in our business all the time. You have a great year and you self-sabotage or you go.
That's right.
Right. You do something that causes you to kind of pull back to what you feel comfortable with.
That's right.
And so Jeff Bezos could argue that he's a failure because he's not worth twice as much as he's worth. Like the challenge with the goalpost not moving is there's no end. Mm-hmm. Right? It doesn't matter how much wealth you build, it doesn't matter how successful you are, there's always something else. And in this business, you can get lost in that. You can always go list one more house. You can always go recruit one more agent. And if you don't set very clear goals, the thing I love about working with Gary is he has very clear defined goals. And once you hit them, he has a full expectation you will not be in the office until the next year comes around. Like it's that important to us. His famous story of hitting all his real estate goals by November and taking December off is a perfect example of that.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be careful that we all think that, and I'm studying a lot on focus right now. And I wish I would have done this 23 years ago. Because the biggest mistake I see biggest failure I see all of us making is we don't stick to one thing long enough to maximize our potential in that one area so that everything else becomes easier or unnecessary. For example, I was talking to a land agent today, and he also does some forestry work, and he does some, mineral rights appraisals, and he does a bunch of other things that are kind of tied and similar client pool, et cetera. And I asked him, what are you making in each of these businesses? And he's, I'm not making much in these 4, but I'm making all my money selling real estate. And I said, well, what if you didn't do these 4 and you just doubled your real estate sales?
Right.
And he's like, oh my gosh, I'd make so much more money. And I said, so that's the distraction. We get distracted by new. And the message is that better is leverage. Leverage is better. We know that, but better is leverage. The better you get at one thing, Gary will say it this way. And I don't want to speak for him, but so I'll get this a little bit wrong. But he'll say, the difference between you and me, Mark, is I've worked on one business for 40 years and built it to the biggest in the world, right? I can't tell you how many businesses I've owned and then not owned and then owned again and then not owned. But it's in the several dozens of companies, always looking for that. And here's the 5 most dangerous words in real estate is leave money on the table. Because we all look up and we go, well, I've got my sales business to a pretty good level, so now I need to go jump into insurance or title or mortgage or something I may not know anything about, and rather than leave it to the professionals or partner with them,
right?
I'm successful at this one thing, so therefore I am successful at all things, and that's been a blind spot for me throughout my career.
Yeah, I can 100% relate. We've talked about several times on this podcast about the necessity to be patient, right? That the patience long enough
so hard
will be there. And I want to ask your opinion on ultimately being successful is kind of you're almost always living in failure if you're going to stay there and continue to push it forward, which doesn't sound awesome.
No.
Right? Like it's not actually the success that we thought we were setting out to do.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I wonder in some regards, like I think about our real estate team and the level that it's grown to. And is it that we go seek out other businesses because we're looking for some relief of the failure, right?
It could be relief of failure. It's also that success is extremely boring. It's the same activity every single day. The person willing to do the same. It's Michael Phelps in the pool for 16 years, 6 hours a day before he ever wins a medal. Right. And all we see is the minute of him swimming and winning the medal.
Yeah.
And then we all say, we'd like to be that. I mean, I'd like to win 12 or whatever he won, right? But I wasn't willing to do 16 years, 6 hours a day in the pool like he did.
For 1 minute.
For 1 minute.
Right,
and
he
for
trained
us,
all of that for 1 minute.
For us, I look at some of our agents, and I'm kind of the same era as you are of some of the best agents in the history of this industry. I think of all that we have, Ben Kinney and Chris Suarez and all those guys that have built massive businesses, and Tim Heil here, and I would argue Jason Abrams is massively successful in the space. We all are roughly, I'm the old guy in the group, but we're all roughly the same age, and we all started out together selling real estate. We all took very different paths, and when I look back at those days, the thing that I didn't take advantage of was, it's one thing to embrace your own failures, but also to commiserate with others and learn from theirs. Imagine what I could have done in my career had I hung out with all those people with Gary in that room. I didn't see the value in it, to be perfectly honest. I'm the number one agent at my board. So I'm good. I get plenty of referrals. I got more business to know what to do with. I am a success.
Right.
Only to look up 23 years later and go, I was an epic failure for not building a $1 billion company that I could have built in that one space.
Well, and you got to want to lean into that tribe as well, because you're not going to get into a group of people and everybody just starts laying their failures out, right?
Nope.
Like you have to build the environment that you get that trust. So thinking about a time over the last few years, again, just helping people navigate, has there been a time where you've experienced failure in the last 2 or 3 years that at the time seemed like, oh no, right? Like I've wrecked the train and like this is completely off the tracks and never coming back. And now you can look back and kind of see how it pivoted or helped you get where you're at today?
Yeah, I think it's every 2 or 3 minutes, not 2 or 3 years. But I think, again, if you embrace it, I will jokingly say when I give a talk or something that my mouth and my foot are the same size for a reason.
Right.
And recently I was in a protected private conversation with someone in the press and a lot of things off the record and everything else. And they couldn't have printed a story further from the actual context of the conversation, misquoted, all those things. And I think it harmed us. And so obviously I wasn't very happy with it, but I will tell you that the learning that came from that and being so guarded in anything you say and over qualifying anything you say to make sure you're not, saying
Very
the wrong
clear.
message
Yeah.
has been a great learning lesson for me. And it's already showing up in different ways. There's an article out today that it does some good for us and that sort of thing. So if you represent a brand or, people think that if you end up being the president of the largest real estate company in the world, you're like at the top. And we look at it the opposite. We're kind of at the bottom. We serve, 200,000 families in this world, and then all the families that they serve it by proxy. And so it's a super humbling experience to know that I can't say the wrong thing. It may impact 200,000 people. I can't be involved in the wrong activity, right? I can't do things that could harm someone's business by extension of being in business with me. And so those are some of the examples I would give you. I think, failing every day at, product launches or service launches or not getting certain things right at the right time. I would argue Command is a great example of not getting it perfect from the jump and therefore having to play catch up and having to kind of go on what I would call an apology tour. And the challenge there is I believe our technology is by far the best in the space. And I'm not just saying that because I'm paid to say that.
Right.
I think it is. I think where we're going, and if you see the predictive analytics we're working on and the AI that we've been working on for the last year and a half, we are able to predict certain consumer and agent behavior with a 94% accuracy. It is the most amazing. So everything I've done since I've been here has been unique in this sense. Started as an agent, worked into a team leader role, failed at that till I didn't, became an OP, failed at that till I didn't, area director, regional director, director of growth, divisional leader, all the different roles. Every one of them, I have failed at them as I've learned, but until I didn't, right? And this role, this is a role that your failures can't be as big, because they have such a dramatic impact. So continuing to embrace that failure is a challenge for us. And I think, but long after I'm out of this seat, if that's 100 years from now or whenever, I will look back and be really proud of some of the things that started out as failures. I'll give you another one. We started the largest real estate school in the world, and we did it in 90 days. And yet it didn't have the adoption we had hoped, and some would call it a failure. The conversion rate, this is a great example. We literally had someone send us a letter and say, we've had 1.2 million people go to our website at the time. It's well over that now. 1.2 million people go to the website, give us all their contact information. Only 112,000 of those people enrolled in that real estate school, by the way, at no cost to them. And out of that, we only converted 15,000 people to Keller Williams. And it was a scathing thing about how we should shut it down and we should do other things. And of course, you have to look at that very objectively and say, maybe there's some truth to this. Maybe this is an epic failure. Until you realize the number one thing we do in this business is build a database, 1.2 million. What's the one thing in our history that we've ever done to do that fast?
That's right.
Number two, we created people who know us, like us, trust us, and understand that Keller Williams is a great place to operate your real estate business with at least 112,000 people, right?
Right.
And the 15,000 lives that we get to then embark on changing today,
That's right.
I would just argue I see that as a failure that we didn't get 100,000 lives to change.
Okay.
But the flip side of that is everything that we're doing, some would call that a massive success. So that's what I mean. Some of your failures can be disguised as successes, but now we have a database of 1.2 million who decided not to get into real estate, but now they have a reason to use a Keller Williams agent. And in that space, another great example, we have 72 million households in Command right now.
Yeah.
Wow.
And there's only 130, just to put that in perspective, in the United States. And so there is a certain timeline where our agents will have every household in the United States and then beyond, Canada, fast follow, and the rest of the world, in one database.
Wow.
Yeah.
And the crazy stat for me is, there's 1.55 million realtors. If you do the math, there's 67 houses per realtor in this space. If all we did is communicate on a fiduciary level on a weekly basis with 67 houses each, there would be no need for third-party lead aggregators to intercept our clients and charge us fees back and all those things. And so, a lot of study on that. When you look at, when you peel the onion a little bit and you think, well, why would Gary Keller or Keller Williams invest $600 million in building a technology for its agents that some would argue you could go You'd spend a little more, but you could go as an agent and get other technology and all those things.
Yeah.
It's not about just driving the cost down for our agents, which is one of the goals.
Right.
But it's about putting the agent back in the seat of being the fiduciary and having your clients come to you instead of jumping on Zillow, for example. That's so there's a reason behind the reason for everything we do.
Well, and I think it's amazing. It's easy for people to stand on the sidelines and yell, the plays that you should have ran or should have picked up this block. Like you see that when you're in the game, right? Like you have mad respect for watching the
Patrick Mahomes, for example, comes to mind. Kansas City kid.
Yeah. But the ability for you and Gary and KW to stick with it in spite of all of that, right? I have respect for that because I know how hard that can be.
Mark, can I ask you a quick question? Sure. Just because you've been able to sit here and list example after example of things, right? Mm-hmm. And then in the beginning, you kind of said, like, your coach said, you got to run faster. And how do you not lose the enthusiasm? Because I think a lot of people hit failure, right? And it's this energy blow. And yet we know if you can go failure to failure really enthusiastically, that's success, right?
Yeah, it's funny. People who judge failure as a negative thing that are, especially when they're around you, can be the biggest energy vampires, right? And so you have to wake up every day and embrace that. It's like you said, it's easy to sit in the stands and critique the players on the field, but sometimes they need critiquing, and we make some dumb mistakes, but the cool thing is we learn from them and then we get a little better. We move 1 inch tomorrow and then we get a little better and we do. And that's how, forgive me for saying this, but that the failures we've had in this company are proof that more failure leads to more success. And we didn't build the number one real estate company under one brand in the world by getting everything right all the time. Nobody does. In fact, I would argue we've never met a bigger failure than Gary Keller. That'll be a tweetable moment. And I mean that in the most complimentary way that I could possibly. I hope to have as many failures as Gary Keller because that means my success will be that much greater, right?
I love that.
I think that's the key is, and so keeping the momentum, always, we call it faces and places. And I tell everybody around me, if you're having a bad day, stay home. And if you have too many bad days in a row, then you'll stay home for good. Right. But at the end of the day, we all we have in this industry is influence. Yeah. And Gary's been able to build an education platform, which is Keller Williams, that now is a tech platform that now has so many other options to it. Yeah. But it's having that influence and having that momentum and understanding there's more failure coming.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Love it.
Right. Yeah. And I love the platform. I love what KW has done for my life. I've said before what it's done for my grandchildren, and I don't have grandchildren. Right? It's just amazing the impact.
It's generational when you look at it, right? I mean, I look at my 10-year-olds and think generationally they're going to be in a completely different spot because of these failures that, and I would agree. And I think Gary would be the first one too to say, yeah, that's what we've done. That's what we do. Yeah. Like we make a practice of it because we're going to find. Right? Are you doing the best you can do or are you doing the best that can be done? Yeah. We're going to find the best that can be done and that's going to be failure along the way.
All right. So in wrapping us up, right? All the successes you've had, all the ways you've felt forward, you get it all done, right? You accomplish all your goals and at the end of life, you're looking back. What then do you think will be your biggest regret or what regret are you trying to avoid happening now?
The only real regret I think I'll have, because at the end of my life, I don't imagine that I'm going to care about money or any of that. The only regret I'll have is that we weren't able to reach more people, because I've watched both from the sideline and from the middle of the field now how this company absolutely changes lives. I've seen example after example of that person who was dead broke and couldn't find their way and has built a massive business that will pay off for their families forever. I've seen the single mom with 4 kids able to pay for all 4 kids' college and now build wealth that will last for generations. I've seen that story so many times over and over and over again that my only regret will be that we weren't able to move faster to get to everybody. And again, I'm biased and I apologize. There's 1.55 million realtors. We have 170,000 of them. I think it's a disservice for someone to operate. There's great competitors. We have amazing competitors in this space. I hope every one of them embrace the fact that they need a culture of changing lives first, real estate sales second. So that's why we're very public about our mission, vision, value, belief, and perspective. We're a God, family, then business. We are, we're very vocal about that. we believe in careers worth having, businesses worth owning, and lives worth living. It's part of what we promote, and we put it out there very publicly and very proudly. And it's not just jargon and words. We actually want you to have a career worth having. We want you to have a business worth owning, because when you do, we all do.
Yeah.
And the legacies worth leaving that hope that you're talking about in today's will be, I will look back at my time here and I know that I've had an impact on people's lives. I just don't know that I'll have enough of an impact on enough people's lives.
Wow. Love it.
Guys, we know that we talk a lot on this podcast about real estate, about business, about Keller Williams. This is not a real estate or Keller Williams podcast, but it's just the platform where we've found to move our businesses forward. If you haven't found a tribe or been able to surround yourself with a group of people that can help you lift you up, build a business, help you, give you a safe environment to fail, please reach out to us. We would love to have that conversation with you, whether you're in real estate or not, just about how we can connect you with some of our amazing partners in order to help you have that platform environment to be the most successful that you can be. Mark, thanks so much for your time today, brother.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate y'all.
Appreciate it.